The storm struck Research Station Omega-7 with the fury of 10 hurricanes combined. Lightning tore across the purple sky of planet Kepler 442b like angry claws, and thunder shook the reinforced walls until the metal groaned in protest. Jake Morrison barely looked up from the quantum engine he was repairing. His strong hands remained steady despite the chaos outside. 5 years of working alone on this forgotten outpost had taught him that the universe was cruel and unpredictable, but it also taught him something else: how to survive. Another flash of lightning illuminated the barren landscape outside, but this time something was different. Through the observation window, Jake saw a streak of fire cutting through the storm clouds. Not lightning, something much more controlled and deliberate. A ship was falling from the sky, its hull glowing, white-hot as it fought against gravity and atmospheric pressure. Jake dropped his tools and rushed to the emergency scanner. The screen came alive with dancing green lines and flashing warnings. There it was, a heat signature 2 kilometers northeast. Definitely artificial, definitely not human technology. The energy readings were unlike anything in the Federation database. This was alien tech, and it was close. Protocol says report it, Jake muttered to himself, but he was already pulling on his storm gear. The nearest Federation outpost was 6 days away by hyperspace communication. Whatever was in that wreckage would be dead or gone long before help arrived. More importantly, something about the crash pattern bothered him. The ship hadn't just fallen, it had been piloted down with skill and precision. Someone had survived. Storm fought him every step as he mounted his all-terrain rover and headed into the tempest. Rain hammered his helmet visor and the wind threatened to flip the small vehicle more than once. But Jake had weathered worse storms than this, and curiosity drove him forward like a flame in his chest. In 5 years of isolation, this was the most interesting thing that had happened to him. He found the wreckage in a shallow crater, steam rising from twisted metal that gleamed with an otherworldly sheen. The ship was sleek and predatory, built for speed and stealth. Definitely military, definitely not from any human fleet he recognized. Warning lights still flickered along its hull, casting eerie red shadows through the rain. Movement near the ship's rear section caught his eye. Jake approached carefully, his hand moving instinctively to the plasma cutter on his belt. What he found made his breath catch in his throat. She was tall, easily 6 feet, with skin that shimmered between silver and pale blue in the lightning flashes. Her features were sharp and angular, undeniably alien yet somehow achingly beautiful. Long, dark hair clung to her face, and blood the color of liquid mercury seeped from a gash along her temple. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, violet like deep space nebulae, intelligent and absolutely fierce. "Human," she said, her voice a low rasp that somehow cut through the storm. She spoke perfect standard English, though her accent was unlike anything he'd ever heard. "I know what you are thinking. Call your authorities, collect whatever bounty my enemies have placed on my head." Jake knelt beside her, his medical training overriding caution. The wound looked serious, but not fatal. "I'm thinking you're bleeding." "To death in my backyard," he replied, pulling emergency medical supplies from his kit. "Everything else can wait." She studied him with those unsettling violet eyes as he worked, cleaning and sealing the wound with practiced efficiency. "You are not what I expected from your species." "Yeah, well, you're not exactly what I was hoping to find on a Tuesday night either." Jake helped her sit up against a piece of debris. "Can you walk? My station's not far, but we need to move before hypothermia sets in." The alien woman, clearly a soldier given her bearing and the weapons harness across her chest, struggled to her feet with his assistance. She was strong, he realized. Even injured, she moved with deadly grace and barely controlled power. "My name is Zara Vex," she said as they made their way slowly back to the rover. Was general of the 7th Assault Fleet of the Corinthian Empire." "Jake Morrison." "And you're a hell of a long way from HumanityInSpace." She was quiet for a moment as he helped her into the vehicle. "I am no longer welcome in Corinthian space. My bloodline has been marked for extinction by imperial decree." The weight in her words told Jake everything he needed to know about galactic politics. Another coup, another purge, another cycle of violence among the stars. He'd seen enough refugees over the years to recognize the pattern, though none had been quite so captivating. As they drove back through the storm, Zara spoke again, her voice stronger now. "I require sanctuary, Jake Morrison. Hide me from those who hunt me, and I will give you something no human has ever possessed, something that will change your small, forgotten world forever." Jake glanced at her through the rain-streaked windshield. Despite the danger she represented, despite every instinct screaming at him to be cautious, he found himself intrigued. And what exactly would that be? Her violet eyes met his, and for a moment he saw something vulnerable beneath the warrior's mask. Something that made his heart race in ways he hadn't felt in years. "The quantum heart codes," she said simply. "Navigation charts to worlds beyond your galaxy's edge. Worlds where your species could expand and thrive. Worlds that could make humanity a true galactic power." The rover's heater hummed softly as they approached the station. But Jake found himself thinking less about the warmth and more about the dangerous, beautiful woman beside him. Whatever she was offering, whatever secrets she carried, his quiet life was about to become significantly more complicated. And despite every rational thought telling him to be careful, he found himself looking forward to the complication. 3 days passed in tense anticipation before the first hunter ships appeared on Jake's long-range scanners. Sleek, angular vessels that moved through space like predators stalking prey. Their hulls bore markings he didn't recognize but instinctively feared, symbols that seemed to shift and writhe even on the static display screen. Zara had spent most of those days recovering in the station's small medical bay. Her alien physiology healed at a rate that amazed him. The gash on her temple was already just a thin silver line, and her violet eyes had regained their sharp intensity. More than that, Jake found himself drawn to her in ways that surprised him. The way she moved with controlled grace, the way her face lit up when she smiled, the musical quality of her laugh when he told her stories about his life on the station. "Hunters," she said simply when he showed her the scanner readings. She stood beside him at the observation deck, her tall frame casting long shadows in the dim light. The way she said the word made his blood run cold. "Yours?" Jake asked, adjusting the scanner's frequency to get better readings on their configuration. "My cousin's." The words carried the weight of betrayal. "General Thera Vex, my father's sister's daughter. She orchestrated the coup that destroyed my family. Now she sends her dogs to finish what she started." Jake studied her profile as she watched the ships patrol the outer system. Over the past few days, he'd learned fragments of her story. How her discovery of the government's plan to enslave lesser species had made enemies among the old guard. How the military elite had turned against their own bloodline for the promise of renewed conquest and power. "Why run?" he asked. "You're obviously a skilled commander. Why not fight back?" Zara's laugh was bitter. "With what forces? Thyra controls the fleet now. My loyal officers are dead or imprisoned. I barely escaped with my life, and..." She paused, her hand moving unconsciously to a sealed compartment on her belt. "With something far more valuable than my life. The thing you promised me." She turned to face him fully, and Jake felt that familiar flutter in his chest that had been growing stronger each day. There was something about her that drew him. Not just her exotic beauty or dangerous grace, but the sharp intelligence behind those violet eyes, the way she listened when he spoke, the gentle way she touched his hand when she was making a point. "The quantum heart codes," she said quietly. "Navigation charts created by my ancestors over 15,000 years ago. They show the locations of worlds beyond the galactic rim. Planets untouched by any civilization, rich with resources and possibilities, knowledge that could make a species incredibly powerful." Jake whistled low. "And you're willing to share this with a nobody engineer on a forgotten outpost?" "You are not nobody, Jake Morrison." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the subtle alien scent of her skin, something like ozone and starlight. "You could have turned me over to those ships, could have claimed whatever bounty Thyra has placed on my head. Instead, you gave me sanctuary without asking for payment. Basic human decency isn't exactly rare. It is rarer than you know." Her hand touched his arm, and he felt warmth spread from the contact. In my experience, most beings act only from self-interest. You are different. The scanner beeped urgently, drawing their attention back to the display. The hunter ships were moving closer, their search pattern tightening around the system's inner planets. "How long before they find us?" Jake asked. "Hours, perhaps less. My ship's emergency beacon was damaged but not destroyed. They will triangulate its signal eventually." Jake made a decision that surprised even him. "There's an old mining complex about 50 kilometers underground. Pre-war. Construction shielded from most scans. We can hide there until they move on." Zara studied him intently. "You would risk your life for a stranger? An alien stranger who has brought danger to your doorstep?" "Maybe I'm curious about those star charts," he said, trying to keep his tone light, but the truth was more complicated. Over the past 3 days, he'd found himself drawn to her in ways he hadn't expected. Their conversations during her recovery had revealed a sharp wit and surprising depth. She spoke of worlds he'd never imagined, of politics and philosophy that spanned solar systems. More than that, he'd caught her watching him work with something like appreciation in those violet eyes. When she'd asked him to explain human engineering principles, she'd listened with genuine interest, her questions revealing a technical knowledge that matched his own. "Very well," she said softly. "But understand, once we descend into those tunnels together, there will be no turning back. The codes carry obligations as well as opportunities. Those who possess its secrets become targets of every power in the galaxy." "Sounds exciting," Jake replied, though his heart was racing. "Let me gather some supplies." As they prepared for the journey underground, Zara helped him pack emergency rations and equipment. Their hands brushed as they worked, small moments of contact that sent electricity through him. He caught her watching him more than once, her alien features softened by something that looked almost like affection. "Jake," she said as they prepared to leave the station, "when we reach the tunnels, I will show you the codes, but first you should know what they truly represent." She paused, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "They are the last hope of my bloodline. The Vex were explorers before we became conquerors. The codes contain the locations of worlds where my people could start again, free from the corruption that destroyed our empire." Another pause, and her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Worlds where humans and Corinthians might build something new together." The implications of her words hung in the air between them as they descended into the abandoned mining complex. In the dim emergency lighting of the tunnels, Zara seemed to glow with an inner light, her alien beauty both exotic and achingly familiar. As the heavy blast doors sealed behind them, cutting them off from the world above, Jake realized he was no longer just hiding a fugitive. He was about to become part of something that could reshape the relationship between species, if they survived long enough to see it through. The hunter ships continued their search above, unaware that their quarry was beginning to trust a PUA human with secrets that could change the galaxy forever. The mining tunnels stretched deep into the planet's core, a maze of passages carved from living rock by machines that had fallen silent long before Jake was born. Emergency lighting cast dancing shadows on the walls as he and Zara made their way deeper into the complex, seeking chambers far enough from the surface to avoid the hunter ship's detection arrays. They found sanctuary in what had once been a geological survey station, complete with mineral analysis equipment and a small living area. Dust covered everything like a gray blanket, but the air recyclers still functioned and the space was mercifully warm after the chill of the upper tunnels. "This will do," Zara said, setting down her pack. In the soft light, her silver blue skin seemed to shimmer, and Jake found himself staring longer than was polite. Over the past few days, his fascination with her had grown beyond mere curiosity. The way she moved with fluid grace, the way her violet eyes lit up when she was thinking, the musical quality of her voice when she spoke softly. It was becoming harder to ignore the attraction building between them. "How long do you think they'll search?" he asked, activating the station's communication array to monitor surface transmissions. "Days, perhaps weeks. Thyra is nothing if not thorough." Zara settled onto one of the station's benches, her long legs folding gracefully beneath her. We may be here for some time. The thought didn't displease him as much as it should have. Well, at least now I can get that explanation about the quantum heart codes. Zara reached for the sealed compartment on her belt, her movements reverent. What she withdrew looked like a crystal sphere no larger than her palm, filled with swirling patterns of light that seemed to pulse with their own life. The moment she activated it, the air around them shimmered with holographic star charts of breathtaking complexity. 15,000 years of exploration, she said softly, holding the device between them. My ancestors mapped the galaxy when your species was still learning to harness fire. Every habitable world beyond the rim, every resource deposit, every navigational hazard, all encoded in quantum crystal matrices. Jake leaned closer, fascinated by the way the light patterns shifted and flowed. The holographic display showed star systems he'd never imagined, worlds of impossible beauty floating in the void between galaxies. It's incredible and dangerous. Wars have been fought over fragments of this knowledge. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen, trying to claim what my family guarded. She gestured to a cluster of golden points beyond the galactic edge, far from any known shipping lanes or colonial territories. But look here. Do you see these markers? Jake studied the display, his engineering mind quickly grasping the significance of what he was seeing. Worlds that could support both human and Corinthian life. Rich in resources, suitable for terraforming. Places where survivors of our respective species could build something new. Her violet eyes met his. Something better than what we've left behind. You're talking about Exodus-level colonization. That would take massive resources, coordinated planning, and trust between species that have barely had diplomatic contact. Zara deactivated the device, the star map fading. It would require leaders on both sides willing to take extraordinary risks. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of possibility settling between them. The underground station felt intimate in the soft light, like a cocoon protecting them from the hostile universe above. Finally, Jake spoke. What was your life like before all this? Before the coup? Zara's expression softened, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked vulnerable. Lonely, if I'm honest. Command is isolating. Few dare to speak freely to a general, and fewer still see beyond the uniform to the person beneath. She studied his face in the dim light. What about you? This outpost seems like an unusual choice for someone with your skills. Jake found himself sharing more than he'd intended. I used to work the core worlds. Big projects, lots of people, constant noise. After my parents died in a transport accident, I couldn't handle the crowds anymore. Too many reminders of what I'd lost. Out here, it's just me and the work. Solitude can be both blessing and curse, Zara said softly. I understand the appeal of avoiding pain, but isolation carries its own dangers. Such as forgetting how to connect with others, how to trust, how to... She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. How to open oneself to new possibilities. Their eyes met and held, and Jake felt the air between them charged with unspoken tension. Over the past week, he'd found himself noticing everything about her. The way she tilted her head when thinking, the grace of her movements, the surprising gentleness in her voice when she spoke of lost things. Zara, he said quietly. What happens when this is over? When the hunter ships leave and you're free to go? I don't know, she admitted. For the first time in my life, I have no orders to follow, no fleet to command. The future is... She searched for the word, uncertain. Maybe. Uncertainty isn't always bad. She smiled then, the first truly unguarded expression he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, making her seem younger, more approachable. You have an unusual perspective on things, Jake Morrison. Yeah, well, you're not exactly typical. Yourself. As if drawn by invisible forces, they found themselves sitting closer together on the bench. Zara's hand rested near his on the metal surface, and when their fingers brushed, neither pulled away. The contact sent warmth spreading through his body. and he saw her violet eyes darken with something that matched his own growing desire. "This is complicated," she said softly. "Most worthwhile things are." His voice was barely above a whisper. "My people and yours, we've never been allies, barely even trading partners. Maybe it's time that changed." She turned to face him fully, her violet eyes searching his face with an intensity that made his heart race. "You would truly consider it, leaving everything you know to help build something unprecedented, with the right partner," he said, and the words hung between them like a promise. The space between them seemed to shrink until he could feel the warmth of her breath on his skin. Her hand covered his completely, her touch sending electricity through his nervous system. Her skin was softer than he'd expected, warmer than human, and when she leaned closer, he caught the subtle scent that was uniquely hers, like ozone after a storm, like starlight made tangible. "Jake," she whispered, and he heard 1,000 unspoken possibilities in the way she said his name. When she leaned closer, he met her halfway, their lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of starlight and promises. Her mouth was soft, warmer than human, and when she sighed against him, he felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe. This wasn't just attraction. It was connection across the vast gulf between species, two lonely souls finding solace in each other. They broke apart slowly, foreheads touching, breathing the same air in the quiet darkness of their hidden sanctuary. "This changes everything," she said softly. "I know," he replied, and kissed her again. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of discovery and growing intimacy. They shared stories of their respective worlds, their dreams and fears, their hopes for a future that seemed increasingly possible despite the hunters circling overhead. Jake learned about Corinthian culture, their art and music, their complex social structures. Zara absorbed everything he told her about human engineering, about Earth's history, about the drive that pushed humanity to explore the stars. But it was the quiet moments that meant the most. The way she curled against him when they slept, seeking warmth and comfort. The gentle way she traced the scars on his hands from years of engineering work. The soft sound of her laughter when he told her jokes that didn't quite translate across species lines. "Your people have a saying," she said one evening as they studied the quantum codes together. "Love conquers all." "Amor vincit omnia," Jake replied, though I'm not sure the ancient Romans had interspecies relationships in mind. Perhaps they were more prescient than they knew. Her violet eyes sparkled with mischief. After all, what is love but the ultimate act of exploration? The willingness to venture into unknown territory with another soul? Jake pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him despite their physiological differences. "When you put it like that, it sounds almost scientific. The heart has its own mathematics," she said, pressing a kiss to his throat that made him shiver. "Its own quantum mechanics. Particles of attraction that exist in superposition until observed, then collapse into something beautiful and certain." "That's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the nerdiest," Jake laughed. "Can it be both?" Their laughter was interrupted by an urgent beeping from the communication array. Jake reluctantly disentangled himself from Zara's embrace and checked the display. His blood ran cold. "They're not just searching anymore," he said grimly. "They're deploying ground forces. Thyra must have triangulated your ship's beacon." Zara was beside him in an instant, her warrior's instincts overriding the tender woman he'd been holding moments before. "How long before they reach us?" "Hours, maybe less." Jake's mind raced through their options. "There's an old maintenance tunnel that leads to the surface about 5 kilometers from here. If we can reach it without being detected, we run," Zara finished. "Again. Not this time." Jake turned to face her, decision crystallizing in his mind. "You said those codes could open new worlds for both our species. What if we didn't have to wait for governments and bureaucrats to make it happen? What if we could prove it works?" Zara's eyes widened as she understood his meaning. "You want to use the codes, to actually travel to one of those worlds. My station has a small experimental quantum drive. It's never been tested for long-range jumps, but with your navigation data, He gripped her hands tightly. We could be the first, Zara. The first humans and Corinthians to reach those worlds together. It's incredibly dangerous. The drive could tear us apart at the quantum level. We could end up scattered across 1,000 light-years of space. Or we could end up somewhere amazing. Jake pulled her into his arms, feeling her heart racing against his chest. Together. She searched his face, and he saw the exact moment she made her decision. The fear faded from her violet eyes, replaced by something fierce and determined. Then we'd better hurry, she said, and kissed him with a passion that tasted of courage and desperate hope. Before my cousin's hunters learn that some secrets are worth dying for. As alarms began to sound in the distance, signaling the approach of Corinthian forces, Jake and Zara gathered their essential supplies and the precious quantum codes. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, two hearts beating as one across the vast gulf between species, ready to leap into the unknown and discover what lay beyond the stars. The ground shook with the thunder of Corinthian dropships landing on the surface above. Through the mining complex emergency monitors, Jake watched sleek assault craft disgorging squads of armored soldiers into the storm-lashed night. Their movements were precise, methodical, the coordinated advance of professional hunters who had never failed to claim their prey. Thermal scanners, Zara said grimly, studying the tactical display. They'll find us within the hour. Jake's hands flew across the quantum drive's control interface, his engineering training taking over despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The drive's charging, but it'll take at least 30 minutes to reach jump capacity. We don't have 30 minutes. Zara moved to the weapons locker, her warrior instinct surfacing. I can buy us time, but no. Jake caught her arm, pulling her away from the weapons. We're not splitting up. We're not fighting. We're jumping together or not at all. Her violet eyes flashed with frustrated determination. Jake, be reasonable. If Thyra takes us both, the codes die with us. Everything we've discovered, everything we could build together, it all ends. And if you sacrifice yourself, what's the point of any of it? He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. I didn't fall in love with a tactical asset, Zara. I fell in love with you, all of you. Your dreams, your hopes, your terrible jokes about quantum mechanics. Despite the approaching danger, she smiled. They're not terrible jokes. They're awful jokes. He kissed her quickly, tasting the fear and determination on her lips. But they're yours, and that makes them perfect. The quantum drive hummed with building energy, its crystalline core beginning to glow with the same ethereal light as Zara's navigation codes. Jake had jury-rigged the alien technology with human engineering, creating something that shouldn't have worked but somehow did, much like his relationship with the woman beside him. Incoming transmission. The communication array crackled to life. This is General Thyra Vex of the Corinthian Empire. You are harboring a traitor to the crown. Surrender the fugitive Zara Vex, and your death will be swift. Zara's jaw tightened, but she activated the comm system. Hello, cousin. Still hiding behind your soldiers, I see. Zara. The voice that came through the speakers was cultured, cold, and utterly without mercy. You've led us quite a chase, but it ends now. You and your pet are surrounded. My name is Jake Morrison, Jake interjected, moving beside Zara at the console. And I'm nobody's pet. Thyra's laughter was like breaking glass. Ah, the human. You have no idea what she's really done, do you? The world she's conquered, the species she's enslaved in the name of Corinthian expansion? My dear cousin has the blood of millions on her hands. Jake felt Zara stiffen beside him, but he didn't waver. People change. They grow. They choose to be better than what they were. How charmingly naive. Thyra's voice hardened. You have 10 minutes to surrender, or we'll simply collapse the tunnels and dig out your corpses. The transmission cut off, leaving them in tense silence. Jake could see the weight of guilt in Zara's violet eyes, the burden of a past she couldn't change but refused to be defined by. She's not wrong, Zara said quietly. I did those things. I followed orders, conquered worlds, believed in the Empire's vision of Corinthian superiority. And then you discovered they planned to enslave every other species in the galaxy, and you risked everything to stop them. Jake pulled her into his arms, feeling her trembling against him. That's what matters. Not who you were, but who you choose to be. The quantum drive's hum was rising in pitch, energy crackling between the crystalline matrices. 20 minutes until jump capacity, and they had less than 10 before Thyra's forces brought the tunnels down around them. There might be another way, Zara said suddenly, her eyes lighting up with desperate inspiration. The codes don't just contain navigation data, they include defensive protocols, ways to mask quantum signatures from pursuit. What are you thinking? If we can partially activate the drive, not enough for a full jump, but enough to create a quantum displacement field. She was already interfacing the alien codes with the human technology, her fingers dancing across controls that Jake had built, but she somehow understood intuitively. We could make them think we've jumped while actually just shifting a few thousand kilometers through folded space. And then we make the real jump while they're searching empty space. Her violet eyes met his, bright with possibility and determination. It's risky. If the displacement field collapses while we're inside it, we get torn apart at the molecular level, Jake finished. But if it works, we disappear completely. To a world where humans and Corinthians can build something beautiful together. The sound of drilling echoed through the tunnels. Thyra's forces weren't waiting for the deadline. They were coming now, boring through the rock with military efficiency that would reach the sanctuary within minutes. Jake made his choice. Do it. Zara's hands flew across the quantum interface, the alien code spinning to life around them in spirals of golden light. The drive's hum became a roar, and reality began to bend at the edges of perception. Through the displacement field's shimmering barrier, Jake could see the tunnels outside warping and twisting as space folded around them. Jake. Zara's voice seemed to come from very far away, though she was right beside him. If this doesn't work, if we don't make it, we will. He pulled her against him as the quantum field intensified, their bodies beginning to phase in and out of normal space-time. And even if we don't, I'd rather die exploring the impossible with you than live safely without you. The drilling sounds stopped. Through the warped perception of the displacement field, they could see Corinthian soldiers flooding into the outer chambers, their thermal scanners sweeping desperately for targets that were no longer entirely there. Now, Zara whispered, and activated the true jump sequence. Reality exploded into light and color and sensation beyond human comprehension. Jake felt his consciousness scatter across dimensions he couldn't name. Felt Zara's presence intertwined with his own as they plunged through the quantum foam between galaxies. For an eternal instant they were one being, one heart, one soul riding the cosmic currents toward worlds that had never known war or hatred or the desperate hunger for power that consumed dying civilizations. Then, with a sound like the universe taking its first breath, they emerged into normal space. Jake's first sensation was warmth, not the artificial heat of the mining station, but the natural warmth of a sun on his skin. His second was the feeling of soft grass beneath his body, and the impossible scent of flowers that smelled like home, despite being the product of alien evolution. He opened his eyes to find Zara beside him, her silver-blue skin glowing in the light of a golden sun that hung in a sky the color of deep purple wine. Around them stretched a landscape of breathtaking beauty, rolling hills covered in crystalline trees that chimed like bells in the gentle breeze, and in the distance, the spires of what might once have been a city, now overgrown with flowering vines that painted the ruins in shades of silver and gold. We made it, Zara breathed, sitting up and staring in wonder at the alien paradise around them. The jump worked. We're actually here. Jake consulted the quantum drive's readings, hardly believing what he saw. According to the navigation data, we're in the Andromeda Galaxy, 47,000 light-years from the nearest known civilization. The perfect place to start over. Zara stood and extended her hand to him, her violet eyes bright with tears of joy and relief. To build something new. Jake took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. Together, they walked toward the ancient ruins, two refugees from a galaxy at war, carrying with them the hope of something better. The quantum codes had brought them here, but it was love that would make this world home. Over the days that followed, they explored their new world and found it everything the codes had promised: abundant resources, breathable atmosphere, and the ruins of an ancient civilization that had apparently transcended physical existence millions of years ago, leaving behind only beautiful architecture and a sense of profound peace. "Look at this," Zara called from where she was examining carved symbols on what might have been a temple wall. "These markings, they're similar to the quantum code language. I think this civilization discovered the same navigational principles. My ancestors did." Jake joined her, running his fingers over the alien script. Maybe that's how they transcended. They found ways to explore not just space, but dimensions beyond physical reality. And now it's ours to explore together. Zara leaned against him, her warmth a constant comfort in this strange new world. Ours to make into something beautiful. They spent their evenings planning the future, how to establish sustainable technology using the resources around them, how to send signals back to their respective species once they'd built something worthy of sharing, how to create the foundation for a new kind of civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. But it was the quiet moments that Jake treasured most. The way Zara looked in the light of their alien sun, the sound of her laughter echoing off the crystal trees, the feel of her hand in his as they explored ancient pathways together. They had found more than a new world. They had found each other, and in doing so, had discovered that love truly could conquer the vast distances between stars. One evening, as they sat watching the purple sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Zara turned to him with an expression of pure contentment. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Leaving everything behind? Your old life, your people, the certainty of familiar things?" Jake considered the question seriously, looking out over their alien paradise. "I left behind a job, a lonely outpost, and a species that's so busy fighting among themselves they can barely see the stars. What I found," he squeezed her hand, "what I found is a partner, a new world, and the chance to help two species learn to reach for something better." "And the loneliness?" "What loneliness?" He pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair, now perfumed with the alien flowers she'd taken to wearing. "I wake up every morning next to the most brilliant, beautiful, dangerous woman in 2 galaxies. How could I be lonely?" Zara laughed, the sound like music in the crystal pure air. "Just 2 galaxies? Well, we haven't explored the others yet." Jake kissed her temple, tasting starlight and possibility. "Give us time." As the alien stars began to emerge in the purple sky above, Jake and Zara sat together in comfortable silence, 2 hearts beating as one beneath constellations no human or Corinthian had ever named. They had crossed the gulf between species, between galaxies, between everything they had known and everything they could become. And in the end, love had been the greatest navigation system of all, guiding them not just to a new world, but to a new way of being. Together they would build something unprecedented, something beautiful, something that would prove to both their species that the universe was vast enough for cooperation, for understanding, for love, that transcended the boundaries of skin and bone and the ancient fears that kept civilizations apart. The quantum heart codes had brought them to this world, but it was their own hearts that would make it home. And as the alien night fell around them, filled with the gentle chiming of crystal trees and the distant call of creatures they had yet to discover, Jake and Zara began to plan not just their tomorrow, but the tomorrows of all the souls who would follow them to the stars, seeking not conquest but connection, not domination but the simple, revolutionary act of love across the infinite darkness of space. Their story was just beginning, the first chapter in a new book of the galaxy, written in the language of hope, courage, and 2 hearts that had found each other across the vast, beautiful, terrifying expanse of the universe.